Hey sports pharmacist, let's talk about what you're going to do when you have a patient athlete that's prescribed any kind of substance that is prohibited, but they need to take it for their medical condition. First thing that you want to do is determine if it's prohibited at all times or just prohibited in competition. So I would go to the Global Drug Reference online, globaldrug.com, select the United States flag, and select your user type of pharmacist. Be specific about the athlete's actual sport that they participate in. Here today we'll just select archery just for an example. And let's say you have a type 1 diabetic that's coming in with an insulin prescription. You can select the specific insulin, but here I'm going to select insulin as the general ingredient for our example today so that you can see that all insulins are included on the prohibited list together. I'll click the insulin so we can get the full results, and you can see regardless of the route of administration, it's prohibited both in and out of competition. You'll scroll down and you can see the WADA classification here. This is updated directly from the WADA prohibited list, and it's updated annually. You'll also want to note the search details. There's a reference number, and copy that into the therapeutic use exemption application if you're doing that with your athlete, or I would document that in the medical record or your MTM documentation or the prescription that you're filling so that you have this reference number, which can be traced back to this search result if ever necessary. And you can go directly from this therapeutic use exemption link, or you can search for, go to usada.org/TUE, and it will bring you to this page. Under the TUE process, you're going to see, is a TUE needed? And what you're asking with that question is there a substance that is not prohibited that could be used in place of this prohibited substance for this athlete's medical condition? So in the case of type 1 diabetes, we do not have another alternative that we could use, and so this athlete is going to need to apply for a therapeutic use exemption. If it is a change of their insulin product or a change of the dose, you will want to help them with this application process. It might just be a renewal that they're doing, but if it's the very first time that they're applying for a therapeutic use exemption, then you will click apply. If you're not sure about the status of the medication or the athlete's level of competition and whether or not they need a TUE, then go through the pre-check form. And if it's something that's already been used and the athlete needs to document this with the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency and request the therapeutic use exemption after use, you would use this emergency treatment form. But here today, we're going to pretend like it's a new prescription and we're applying for the very first time. So we've already done step 1 where you determine whether or not a therapeutic use exemption will be needed. We've checked the status. We know it's prohibited both in and out competition, and we've thought about whether or not there are any alternatives that could be used that are not prohibited. And then you're going to help the athlete find their condition so you can get the right forms. We'll scroll down to diabetes in this case. And you're going to download both the USADA checklist and the WADA guidance document so that the athlete knows the checkoffs that they need for completing the therapeutic use application, and the WADA guidance document offers specific guidance for the athlete and the physician specifically as they're filling out the form. And then the next step is to download the application itself, which is basically like a cover sheet that will be used when submitting the information to the organization, and in this case it's going to be to USADA. For most sports, they're going to submit it directly or use the application for USADA. You can see there's a couple different forms here based on the athlete, the sport that they participate in. After the athlete gathers all that information together from their prescriber and request that medical documentation, and they have signed the application and the prescriber has signed the application, then The complete documents will be submitted to the Therapeutic Use Exemption Department at USADA, and then this information goes to review. And a physician that is specially trained in the WADA prohibited list is going to review the information. And so, for example, in our case of a patient with diabetes, an endocrinologist that is specially trained in sports is going to review this to determine whether or not the use of this prohibited substance puts that athlete as an individual at an unfair advantage using insulin. And basically, is it going to take them to considered a normal state of health, or is it going to give them an advantage in sport if they use it? And then once that application review process is done, then USADA's TUE department is going to contact the athlete directly to tell them whether or not their therapeutic use exemption was approved or denied. And they will give them guidance as to why it was denied, if for any reason it would be denied. And hopefully that gives you some good introduction to what to do when your athlete has a prohibited substance that they are using for a medical condition. Good luck working with your athletes.